I've mentioned Airbnb a lot, so I want to break down the reasons we love it so much. These are 10 reasons Airbnb is better than any other type of lodging. Let's get started. Our family of 7 has stayed in over 30 Airbnbs in almost 20 different countries. When you have a large family, it's difficult to find a place to stay anywhere you go, but Airbnb has been an answer to our prayers. So let's jump into the reasons. If we haven't met yet, my name is Kalen. I'm the founder of Freedom Sprout, where we talk about raising intentional children and living intentional lives. If that interests you, please hit the subscribe button below. Before we get into it, you can get almost $50 off your first stay at Airbnb if you've never used it before. See the link below. Now here's why Airbnb is the best way to stay. Number 1, Airbnb is accommodating. It's not easy to find a place to stay when you have 5 kids. We used to go from hotel to hotel until we could find one that would fit our family. And when we finally found a hotel, we would have to stay in a suite or something that was really overpriced and not impressive at all. And we still had kids sleeping on the floor. You can see on Airbnb, it breaks down all the beds that you're gonna have, exactly what types of beds they are, and all the amenities that are available for that unit. So there's no fighting over who sleeps where when you get there. Number 2, Airbnb is affordable. I used to say that Airbnb was cheaper for us because we're a family of 7 and we needed a bigger place, but we've realized that Airbnb is just cheaper in general. Even when my wife and I have taken trips, it's always the cheapest option. When we've traveled to expensive places like Rome and Venice, we've been able to find an Airbnb for less than $30 a night, and when the whole family's there, it's usually around $50 a night, and that's for nice places. So I've come to the conclusion that Airbnb is cheaper than hotels and even hostels a lot of times. And when you go to book, you can book exact dates, or you can do a +1 or +3 or something so that you can get close to your dates and you get a lot more options and a lot cheaper options usually if you're a little bit flexible on your dates. For example, this home nested in the Italian Alps accommodates 7 people, and it's only $66 a night. One time we stayed at a completely remodeled farmhouse in Belgium for $28 a night, and it held our entire family, and it was a cool experience. So it's more affordable than anywhere else we've tried to stay. Number 3, Airbnb locations are better. A small town may have 20 or 30 hotels, but they have thousands of apartments and homes. Within those apartments and homes, you'll find all kinds of Airbnb options. Here's an example in Cluj, Romania, where hotels for our family are usually about $150 to $200 a night. I set the price cap to $100 and I found plenty of options, and they're all in great locations. This is also only 2 weeks out, so if you booked a little farther out, you'd find even cheaper options. And if you have less than 7 people in your family, it's going to be cheaper. So since Airbnbs are scattered throughout the city, you get to pick exactly where you want to stay in that town. And that's also great because it immerses you in the culture, which leads me into the next point. Number 4, Airbnb immerses you in the local culture. We've stayed all over Europe, and this is the best part in my opinion. Why stay in a commercialized hotel when you can immerse yourself directly in the culture? That's exactly what Airbnbs do. You get a feel for what it's like to actually live in that city. And even in the States, you can get a feel for what it's like to live in different towns in different states than you're used to. And yes, we do have culture in the States. We've had so many cool experiences with the kids, seeing the local culture, seeing the types of appliances they use, the things that they have in their homes, even what they keep in the cupboards. It's kind of weird, but you can see it. And if you're the social type, you can usually meet the neighbors, and the host will gladly introduce you much of the time. Or you can just be a hermit and not talk to the neighbors. Either way is fine with Airbnb. Number 5, many Airbnbs allow pets. We don't have pets right now, but when we do, Airbnb is always the best option for traveling with those pets. Of course, all B&Bs aren't pet friendly, but you can click on the filter option and you can sort by pet friendly places. And regardless, it gives you a lot more options than you would have with traditional lodging when it comes to pets. Number 6, Airbnbs usually have a kitchen. So not only is it cheaper to stay there in the first place, but they come with often a fully stocked kitchen if you look for that ahead of time. So you can save money on food while you're saving money on lodging. And the best part is it doesn't cost extra, it's actually becoming the standard to have a kitchen, which makes sense because you're just staying in people's homes. So who doesn't have a kitchen? Again, just filter it and sort by places with kitchens if you want that. It's a good way to save money on food while you're traveling. Number 7, Airbnb usually has flexible check-in and check-out times. So if you want to arrive at midnight, or you don't know when you're going to get there, or you want to check out at 2 p.m. instead of 10 or 11 in the morning, Airbnb is your best bet. Sometimes hotels charge for late checkout, and with Airbnb, it's just a simple message to your host and you get a late checkout, or a simple message to your host saying that you're coming in later, and it's not a big deal. With Airbnb, you're just talking to a regular person. This actually goes for canceling too, because you're not working with a major company, you're working with a person. We booked a trip recently to Croatia, and it was right before COVID hit, and when the time came for us to take the trip, we weren't able to leave the country, and we talked to the host and they pushed it back for us. And then whenever the time came for us to take it the second time, we still couldn't go and they canceled, and they actually gave us a lot of our money back, even though that specific Airbnb had a no cancellation policy and they weren't supposed to give us anything back. But again, it's a regular person. They understood our situation and they helped us out. And on top of that, check in and check out is usually easier in general. We've often done it without even talking to anybody. There's a lockbox, you just get a key, you go in, you leave the key in the lockbox whenever you leave, and if you don't want to talk to anybody, you typically don't have to. And you can even filter by places that have a self check-in option, so you don't have to talk to anybody if you really don't want to talk to anybody. Personally, I prefer talking to the host, and the next point is why. Number 8, many Airbnbs offer local tips. Your host isn't a hired guide, but I've never met a host who wasn't willing to show us some local tips. They're usually really passionate about it because they live there. They can tell you all the cool things to do that nobody knows about. They can tell you about the best restaurants. They can give you all these local tips. And the coolest part is whenever they tell you about stuff that you're not going to easily find on the internet, stuff that would be on a website like Atlas Obscura, which, while we're on the topic, Atlas Obscura is a great way to find things that are lesser known in the area you're visiting. You can just search for your destination and then you can see all the unusual attractions that there are. And you can find some really cool stuff to do, stuff that other people aren't doing. So here's a quick scroll through of some of the lesser known things in Rome, for example, on Atlas Obscura. But you can go to any major city and they'll have all kinds of things, and even a lot of the smaller cities have surprisingly high amounts of things on there too. And along the same lines with seeing new things and seeing the cool things in the city, Airbnb also allows you, this is kind of like a bonus tip, it also allows you to see new things in the units. So if you've never seen a bidet and you're going to Europe, you have the option to see a bidet. If you don't want to use it, it's fine, but at least you get to see it and you're in a home with stuff that you wouldn't normally have. Or maybe a washer dryer combo in the middle of the kitchen. That's a thing, and we've seen that plenty of times. Little things like that. The kids always explore the Airbnb when we first get there and they see all the stuff and they're like, hey, this is cool. This is a new thing that they've never seen before. Plus, it gives us ideas for later on whenever we buy or build our forever house. We can have these ideas to implement and we can actually use them. So we've seen all kinds of unique things, and there are all kinds of unique Airbnbs. Here's an example of a snow igloo in Finland. You can book for usually around $150 to $200 a night, depending on when and how far out you book, but you get to stay in an igloo, so that's pretty cool. Or here's a castle in Ireland. There's actually a lot of castles in Ireland you can stay at. Some of them are pretty affordable and some of them are well over $1,000 a night. But if you have a big group and you split that up, you can actually stay at some really cool places and it won't be very much per person. I mean, just think if you have a castle with like 30 beds and you can find 30 people to go with you, that's pretty cheap, even if it's $1,000 or $1,500 a night. You could even plan an entire trip around your Airbnb. If you find a really unique place, that could be the focus of the trip, and then you can branch out and see stuff, but you get to stay in that castle, the igloo, or whatever the case. That could be a pretty cool vacation. Number 9, Airbnbs offer more privacy. So hotels are pretty cool until your neighbor's snoring at 2 a.m. and the walls are paper thin, or there's a frat party across the hallway and the front desk won't do anything about it. With Airbnb, you get to pick the kind of place you're staying at. If you want to find a cheaper apartment or something, that's cool, but a lot of times we stay in standalone houses and you have plenty of privacy. Sometimes you don't want privacy. Whenever we were in Ireland, we had a standalone house, but the host lived right behind us, and we actually ended up hanging out with her a lot, and she provided the breakfast every morning for the kids, and it was to the point whenever we left, we felt like we were leaving my mom's house because she was standing outside in her robe seeing us off. So, we got to meet cool people, and then we get to stay in cool places like that. But if you want the privacy, you can 100% get the privacy. We stayed at an Airbnb in the middle of Zagreb, Croatia, and it was in the middle of a busy area, but there was a secret door to get to our Airbnb. We went through that, and then we went down a little tunnel and up a staircase, and it was completely private, but we had a view that overlooked the whole city. Just cool experiences like that. These are things you only get with Airbnb. And number 10, Airbnbs simply have more room. On top of having more beds, they just have more space in general. You won't feel cramped like you do in a hotel room. And you'll usually have a full living room and a full kitchen and a dining room and big bedrooms, plenty of space. So if you're looking for space, Airbnb is your go-to lodging option. Like I said, our family is big. Airbnb gives us enough space for an affordable price. So if you haven't tried Airbnb yet, I recommend to give it a shot. Again, use my link below to get almost $50 off your first stay, but give it a try. You will not be disappointed. Like I said in the beginning, we've stayed in over 30 Airbnbs. We've never had a bad experience. There was one time whenever it was slightly difficult to check in. It maybe took 15 or 20 minutes instead of 1 or 2 minutes, but that's the closest thing we've had to a bad experience with Airbnbs. I've heard horror stories, and I'm sure there are those, but as long as you look at the reviews ahead of time, and you know what you're getting into and look at all the amenities and make sure they provide everything that you want, it's going to be a great time. And finally, you should consider hosting if you have an extra bedroom, or maybe you have a home or something, or you have a rental that you would rather turn into an Airbnb. Consider hosting if you have something like that. It's a great way to make extra money. Or I know a lot of people who used to have rental homes and they've turned them into Airbnbs, and instead of making $1,000 or $1,200 a month in the rent they were making, they're now making $3,000 or $4,000 a month because they're hosting. So I'll put a link below if you want to host. That's another good option. Before you go, please subscribe to get more videos on money, minimalism, and our travel journey around the world. Check out my new book, Intentional Children. I'll put a link to that below. That's all for today. I will see you next week.